Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to check out today's video. And guys, today we are in the first week of February, which marks a big transition month in bass fishing. And I want to talk about the best place to catch a bass, or especially like a quality bass, a bigger bass in the month of February. One of the things that I found out about this particular month, this is when the bigger fish first start to move shallow. And if you're in the right area when those bigger fish start to move shallow, they're very catchable, they're very aggressive. It's a great time of year to catch one over 7 pounds. So I'm going to give you guys sort of my opinion, the type of area that I look for in the month of February that's really worked for me. Definitely think it's going to add up to some good fish for you guys. Also, guys, real quick, just a reminder, you guys have heard me talking about it, trying to get everybody set up for this, getting ready to start a live stream here on Intuitive Angling. This is going to be a private live stream we're going to do weekly for channel members and Patreon members. So if you guys would like to be part of that live stream moving forward, we're going to do a lot of interaction with answering questions. Just go to my YouTube homepage, click on the join button for membership options, or you can go to the video description in any of my videos and just click on the Patreon program to get set up with that. So really appreciate that. And also, guys, thank you everybody that's been going into that description and getting you a map through my Fish the Moment Lake Map Breakdown maps, my tackle warehouse link, using that for your tackle. Thank you very much for me and my family. We really appreciate that. Okay, we're starting to turn the corner in the month of February. It's been a pretty hard winter the last 3 or 4 weeks. We've had that Arctic mass has been parked over the central part of the country here, and it's been super cold. You can see we've still got snow on the ground here. It's been here for about a week, but things start to change in February, and it's like by the mid to end of February, there's definitely a transition that's noticeable in bass fishing that I want to talk about today, in the place of areas you want to look for. Okay, now first of all, one of the things that I talk a bunch about on the channel here is water temperature and water clarity in terms of bass, the movements and where they're at and the lures they prefer, and that does have a big option in it. But one of the things that I found out about the pre-spawn period of the year, like we're getting into now, February and March, the bass are more motivated by the lengthening daylight hours than they are the water temperature. Because here in Missouri, one of the things that we have a very radical change in the weather all the time. We have weather all over the place, and based upon the particular weather patterns that are coming in, a lot of times we'll have ice on the water in March. When you think it should not have ice, we've had ice on the water, and the water's really cold. But the thing about it is the fish are still not reacting to that cold water because they are reacting more to the increase in the daylight hours. Biologically and instinctually and intuitively within a bass, they make their move according to the increase, amount of daylight hours. It gains about 2 minutes every day, more so than the water temperature. So one of the big pieces of advice I'll give you guys for February bass fishing is don't pay much attention to the water temperature, because that's going to really limit the type of lures that you fish and versus the ones you need to be fishing with the longer daylight hours. Okay, given that, once you start getting into the mid to late part of February, you start to have a certain percentage of the bass population in the lake that begin to move shallower. And when I'm talking about shallower, I'm talking about in less than 10 foot of water, because say like in January or even the first part of February, a lot of those fish may be out deep, they may be suspended. They're just living in a little bit deeper water for the winter time. But when February gets here, those fish start to move up shallow, and they start to get ready, not to spawn, but they're staging to get ready to spawn. They're moving up in their pre-spawn areas, in preparation for, finding areas that are prime spawning areas, building nests, all that type of deal. Okay, now given that, the type of area that you want to go to in February, this is really critical. There's 2 type of areas that the bass really get in February based upon the type of lake you're fishing. If you're fishing a grass lake, and I'm not going to go into detail on this because that's a minority of the country. There's just a small percentage of anglers actually fish grass, but I will throw in just a little bone for you guys on the grass here. If you're fishing a grass lake during the pre-spawn, you always want to be on those bigger grass flats that are close to some type of a ditch or a river channel that has some proximity to a big spawning cove or spawning bay. So in other words, one of the things that I like to do in a grass lake is I like to find the grass out on the, usually they're on main river, main lake flats, and try to find those flats that have a lot of creek or drop-offs or river channels nearby. That's because those fish will pull up in and out of those channels into those grass flats, and they want to stage on the edge of those grass flats a lot of times next to deeper water, but they want to be somewhat closer to a spawning bay. So that's one thing to remember with that. But moreover, if you're fishing most of the man-made lakes like the rest of us fish here, everything about the pre-spawn, as far as in February, it all revolves around some type of a channel swing or channel bank. A channel swing or channel bank is the #1 pre-spawn February area to catch a bass in. And most of the time, I prefer to go into the major creek arms to look for this type of water. You can catch a few fish on the main lake. A lot of times, if you can get on them on a main lake, they're a little bit bigger fish. But it seems like to me the numbers and the most action that you're going to have is if you pick out 2 or 3 major creek arms and then look at your map, try to find out where the creek channel swings in close to some of those steeper banks. Those are the prime areas for your pre-spawn fish, especially if they are close to a spawning cove. So here would be an ideal situation what I look for in February every single time. I'll look at my map and I'll try to find a major creek arm, and I'll go about halfway back into that creek arm. And I'm looking, the #1 thing I'm looking for first is where that creek channel comes closest to the bank. Now, based upon the type of lake you're fishing, as far as the rock composition, and if it's a highland lake or a lowland reservoir, those channel banks, they can be clay, they can be gravel, they can be bluffs, they can be big rocks. It just depends on how your lake's laid out. But it doesn't really matter what the rock structure is. It matters that channel bank, being close to that creek channel. That's the main thing. That's where those fish are going to pull up out of that creek channel onto those steeper channel banks, and they're going to stage on those channel banks, usually in less than 10 foot of water. Now, what makes this even better is if you've got a nearby cove. So perfect situation would be if you go halfway back in a cove and you find, halfway back in a major creek, and you find a nice cove back in there that has a lot of good spawning habitat, like flatter banks, hard bottoms. And if you come out of that cove and you can find the nearest channel bank, that is gold for the month of February. And the bank itself leading up to the cove can be good. The point leading into the cove, that's where those fish will stay until that water temperature starts to warm up into the upper 50s or close to 60, and then they'll move into those, those spawning coves to spawn. Some of the best baits, for February fishing, a lot of it depends on your water clarity and your water temperature, but one of my favorite ones is still a jerk bait. Jerk bait, especially a little bit bigger jerk bait, like the Mega Bass Edo Shiner or something a little larger. Really good bait during the pre-spawn like that. Same with an Alabama rig. If you got a windy day with some clouds, you can slow roll an Alabama rig down those channel banks. If the water visibility is, anywhere between that 2 to 4 foot range, a lot of times I'll parallel that bank with like a rock crawler or a wiggle wart. And then jig's good too, pitching a jig up onto those bare banks. And then once that water temperature starts to get into the mid 50s, my #1 bait to catch big ones on, guys, is a big spinner bait. 3/4 ounce spinner bait with like a #6 or #7 willow leaf blade on it, throwing it to that channel bank and just slow rolling it down the slope of that bank. That big spinner bait will catch you some good fish, especially when that water temperature is 55 or so. But this is probably my favorite time of year to fish. I mean, when that water is in the 50s and they start to get on those channel banks, the size of fish you catch goes way up. I mean, this is the time of year where you have your best chance to catch your biggest fish of the year. There's more big fish, bass over 4 pounds up in that zone this time of year than any other year. And based upon what part of the country you live in, this is going to happen anywhere between mid-February to mid-March, just geographically where you're at. But it's pretty easy, guys. It's not anything complicated. Best advice I can give you guys, once that water temperature starts warming up into the upper 40s and close to 50 degrees, get in halfway back in those major creeks, get on the steep banks, and just stay on that, and you'll run into some big ones eventually with that. So Anyway, I hope it helps out. We'll talk later.